And today we're going to talk about the thyroid. Now, the thyroid is actually a gland that sits here in your throat. It's a butterfly-shaped gland that sits here in the, basically just behind the voice box there. And you'll see sometimes you'll see women who have a bulge here, and that's because they have a hyperactive thyroid and their thyroid starts to increase in size. So, and there's different conditions that are associated with the thyroid. So we have things like Graves' disease, we have Hashimoto's disease, and these are autoimmune conditions. But what I'm talking about today is what we call subclinical hypothyroidism. So I'm going to be talking about subclinical hypothyroidism primarily because this is what impacts most women. And it's estimated between 70 to maybe 80% of women, as they move through their menopause transition, actually have this condition or an underactive thyroid. And the majority of women that are diagnosed with an underactive thyroid are in this stage of life. So 55 and above is when many women are diagnosed. But in fact, there are women, lots of women. I've worked with women as really young with issues with their thyroid. It's becoming a bigger and bigger issue. It's becoming a bigger concern, and quite often is not being picked up by the medical profession. And one of the reasons being is that the way they test for thyroid, when doctors are looking, when they're doing testing for your thyroid, they are looking for a disease. So they're looking to see whether or not you have a disease that they can treat. What I'm talking about is when your thyroid is just not working as well as it could be, but it's not bad enough that we would consider it that you have a thyroid disease. So this is why we call it subclinical. So subclinical means it's not yet a diagnosable disease, so it's below the clinical diagnosis, and hypo means low thyroid function. So this is where I work out. This is what I'm going to be talking about today. So as I said, thyroid sits here. Now let's have a little bit of an overview about what the thyroid is, what it does, and why women tend to have a bit of an issue with it. So the thyroid basically is the gland that helps to regulate our metabolism. And there are a couple of, what happens is the thyroid releases a hormone called TSH. So which is I'll start that again. The pituitary gland releases a hormone called TSH. So the pituitary gland releases TSH, and then TSH tells the thyroid gland to produce hormone. And what the thyroid gland does is it produces what's known as T4. Now, T4 is also called thyroxine, and it is made of 4 different iodine molecules. So 4 iodine molecules together make T4. T4 is not active. So it makes very little difference to what happens in the body. It's only about 5% of T4 is active. To make it active and to actually make it into a hormone that works with our body and balances our metabolism, we need to make T3. And to do that, it means that we need to chop off one of the iodine molecules, leaves us with T3. This happens in the liver. This process of removing that iodine and creating T3 happens in the liver. And to help that happen, we need the nutrient selenium. Selenium is really, really important for this function to happen. So if we want to have healthy thyroid hormones, it's important that we have a few things that are working properly. One is we need to have a liver that's working properly. So it needs to be able to do the conversion. 2, we need to make sure that we've got enough levels of selenium to be able to make that conversion happen. If we don't have enough levels of selenium, what often happens is what is created is what's known as reverse T3. Now, reverse T3 is not an active T3 hormone, so it's an inactive T3 hormone. So where the problem lies is that many women's liver is not functioning at its optimal level due to environmental toxins, dietary choices, alcohol intake, and all of that. Also, selenium is really hard to get in our diet because of the way our farming methods, because a lot of the soil, because selenium comes from the soil, it's a mineral, a lot of the soils have been over farmed, and this has led to selenium deficiency. So selenium is actually quite difficult to get in our diet. You can supplement it, but you do get it in some nuts and seeds, but it's something that many women are deficient in, and this is what causes the problem. And then on the other side of that, iodine, we are also quite often deficient in iodine. In the past, we used to get a lot of iodine drinking milk because they used to clean the milk vats out with iodine. Iodine is a really great like disinfectant, and they used to, because it's an antimicrobial, they used to clean a lot of the milk fats out with iodine. So when we drank milk, we automatically got iodine, but now they don't do that. They use chlorine instead. So now we're getting chlorine instead of iodine. And unless you're having iodized salt, and this is one of the issues that the medical profession did realize, is that we have a deficiency in iodine. So that's when they start to iodize. They put iodine in the salt, and that's where we have iodized salt. So that's kind of how we get iodine. The other way we can get iodine is through our diet, and lots of sea vegetables, so seaweeds and things like that, are really, really high in iodine. So we're back to the stage where this is understanding what's happening with the thyroid. If we don't have the right nutrients, if our liver's not working properly, it can cause an imbalance within the thyroid hormones. And what some of the signs that we get when our thyroid is low is weight gain. And this tends to be, whereas I spoke yesterday about insulin, where that's tend to be tummy weight, thyroid, not always, but a lot of the time, is sitting around the hips and the butt. So, but it's weight gain and the inability to lose it. Intolerance to the cold and heat, or heat. So either, you can't stand the cold or you can't stand the heat, but there's just this fluctuation. And as I go through these, you'll start to notice some of these symptoms and how they are very similar to the symptoms that women experience as they're going through menopause. So you start to question, where are these symptoms coming from? Hair loss or dry hair, really dry hair, slowed down heart rate. So the hypothyroidism is everything going slower. Constipation, so we're not moving our bowels as often. Poor attention and brain fogginess, shortness of breath, feeling tired, heavy menstrual cycles, or on the other side, not bleeding at all. But, as I said, as we're coming into menopause, our cycles are changing anyway. So we've also got to consider what's going on with progesterone and estrogen. Tingling in the fingers can also be a hypothyroid condition or symptom. Cramping, constant cramping, not being able to hear properly, and dry skin and puffiness in the hands and feet. So just kind of that feeling of that puffiness. Now, many of these symptoms, as you notice, are also what we see to be associated with menopause. Now, menopause doesn't cause these symptoms. These symptoms are created because your thyroid isn't working as well as it should do, due to several different reasons. And I'm going to go into a little bit more about that in a minute. So the thyroid's not working properly, and then we'll come along, and I spoke about estrogen last week. When you've got what we call estrogen dominance, Dr. John Lee did a bit of work on this, that estrogen dominance can actually cause hypothyroidism as you come through this stage of life, because estrogen isn't being counterbalanced by progesterone. It starts to impact the thyroid, and then the thyroid stops functioning properly. So it's as I said, none of these hormones work independently. They just they're all impacted by each other. And you can't just go and deal with one hormone without considering what the impact of that hormone is going to be on the other hormones. And this is one of the issues when women take HRT, an estrogen-based HRT, because it can push them into estrogen dominance, and then that impacts the thyroid. So you see that it's like, nothing stands alone. So we do need to make sure that if we're going to supplement, I mean, I'm not a big believer in supplementing hormones anyway, because I think we can get the body to rebalance itself. But if you're going to supplement one hormone, you need to make sure that everything else is working fine. So what can we do about it? There's a couple of other things that can cause issues with your thyroid. Some drugs as well. I better cover this off as well. There are some drugs which also can impact the way the thyroid works. Steroids. So if you're taking steroids, and this is, if you just need to take steroids for some acute pain, it's not a big issue. This is long-term steroid use. Cholesterol, so your statins can also impact your thyroid. Anti-epileptic drugs, beta blockers can also impact the way that your thyroid works. Also, autoimmune diseases. Autoimmune diseases is when the immune system is overactive against some of your own tissue within the body, and we actually have thyroid antibodies, so your body can actually start to attack its own thyroid tissue. So autoimmune conditions which specifically target the thyroid can play a really big role in what's going on as well. Iodine deficiency, I have already mentioned, and also selenium deficiency. So what can we do about this? There are a couple of things. I mean, you can go and see a doctor, and they may give you some thyroid medications. But as I said, most of the time they are not. They're not seeing you as having a disease until your thyroid is really not working really well. So I'm going to give you some things you can do when we're in this subclinical stage that hopefully will help you. Now, even though you might be feeling quite tired, exercise is actually really important. So trying to get some exercise, and it might be that you start off slowly and just going for a walk, but trying to actually move every single day. And you can start, if you're not used to exercise, starting with 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and just building it up, because what that does is it stimulates the thyroid to release more T4, which will then be able to be converted to T3. So exercise. Also making sure that you get sunshine. We need vitamin D for various reasons, but it also helps the thyroid work. So if you're exercising, if you can do that outside in the sun, 2 birds, 1 stone, outside and do your exercise out there. Stress. Now, stress is, you all know, if you've been watching any of my videos, stress is a common theme across everything here. The stress plays a massive role in the way your thyroid works, because when we're stressed and we release the hormone of cortisol, I'm going to be talking a little bit more about this tomorrow, basically what it's telling the thyroid to do is actually to increase your metabolism, because it needs to be able to get away from whatever the threat is. Now, if this is happening all the time and the thyroid's always kind of increasing going faster and faster to try and keep up with the stress, over time, you're actually just basically going to run out of resources, and the thyroid is not going to work as well as it needs to for various reasons, the nutrition, all of this. So stress plays a massive role. So what can we do about stress? And as I said, I'm going to talk a lot more about stress tomorrow, but looking at ways to quieten down, just to come and be silent, meditation if it works for you, journaling, being mindful, all those type of things will help to reduce your stress. There's so much into stress, and as I said, I'll talk more about that tomorrow. But it's fine. It's working out what's stressing you and looking at it and go, well, is there anything I can do about this XYZ, this stress? If there is, well, then take the action to do something about it. If there's nothing you can do about it, then accept that that's the way it is and move on. but we continue to stress about things that we can do nothing about. So we'll talk more about that tomorrow. What else can we do? There are a few nutrients we need to be looking at. Now, sorry, I do have notes in front of me, so just kind of go through because there's just so much information and I want to make sure that I didn't leave anything out. So the key nutrients, zinc. Now, many of us are deficient in zinc because we're not getting enough zinc in our diets. So we do need zinc. We need zinc for just about every single body function in our body anyway. So zinc is really important. Iodine, as I said, is important. It's necessary to make our thyroid hormones. Copper is also important because it works it's one of the nutrients that's required along with selenium to convert the T4 to T3. Selenium, I've already mentioned, required for that conversion. And we've got a few of the vitamins. Vitamin A works really, really well with zinc to help manufacture the thyroid hormones. We need iron to help use the thyroid hormones within the cells, and vitamin D, we require that as well. So they're kind of the nutrients. And whilst I don't want you running off and trying to find a nutrient that has all of that in there, let's look at some of the foods. So foods that are high in iodine, all your sea vegetables, so your seafood, your seaweed, your sea salt, Celtic sea salt. So try to get some of the seaweeds and that into your diet. Things like dulse flakes, arami seafood, kombu, all really great seaweeds that you can get put into your diet. Also, nori, that's what they wrap the sushi in, that's the seaweed, but you can buy that just as the sheets. Quite nice, actually. I like it. Also, things like looking at some of your tamari sauces as well. Zinc-rich foods, once again, your seafood, your pumpkin seeds are really high in zinc. And if you eat meat, lamb and beef, liver are also high in zinc as well. Selenium foods, Brazil nuts, really good, high in selenium. Once again, liver, sardines and most fish. Vitamin A, we're looking at your orange and yellow, so your carrots, your kumaras, all really high in vitamin A. Vitamin D foods, seafood, so fish, salmon, sardines, and obviously the sun. Now, I just want to make one point about foods as well, because we do have to be a little bit careful because some foods have got what we call goitrogens. And these block the uptake of iodine within the body. And some of these foods that contain these goitrogens these are the raw. So it's when we eat them raw. So raw broccoli and cauliflower, cabbage, kale. Kale became a really big thing to be eating raw kale. All of this is better that we have it if it's cooked, and particularly if you know you've got an issue with your thyroid. Other foods that we need to be careful of are your spinach, not having too many strawberries, soy, peanuts, pine nuts, walnuts. We just need to be careful. If you don't have an issue with your thyroid, it's not a problem, but it's not overeating some of these foods. So, but once we cook them or ferment them, it's not an issue, but it's only when it's raw. The other thing with food, some of the key foods which cause issues with the thyroid are the gluten, so grains, wheat-based, particularly wheat-based grains, and all your glutens, your sugar. Sugar's a problem across the board. Also be careful of dairy, particularly if you've got autoimmune diseases, because these foods can actually trigger the autoimmune and make it worse. So avoiding all your processed foods, your sugars, your grain-based foods, so particularly your wheat-based foods, dairy. If you do avoid all of that, then you will actually be able to support your thyroid. There's just so much when talk comes to thyroid, and I'm trying to bring it into smaller chunks for you because it is just such a big thing, and so many women have this issue. But in short, when you eat well and eat the right foods for your body, you move the way your body is designed to move, you reduce the stress, reduce the environmental toxins in your life, and change your mindset around what's happening, And these are the same 5 steps that I talk about all the way through when it comes to thriving in menopause. When we start to do this, then we start to find that our body will start to rebalance itself. As I said, I was trying to get this much information into this much space today. Hopefully I've covered it well enough for you to understand what's going on. But issues with the thyroid is not caused by menopause. The problems are already there. And what happens is that when we get to menopause, these issues can sometimes start to come up and start to we become more aware of them. So it's not because we're in menopause it's causing the problem. The problem is because generally we're nutrient deficient, our liver's not working properly, and our thyroid was already struggling, and now we're actually seeing it because we've lost the protection of the reproductive hormones. So that's it from me today, and tomorrow I'm back with another big topic, and that is stress, but it's the topic that I love to talk about, what it is, what our stress hormones do, how they change our body, all of this. I'll be back tomorrow to talk all about stress. Bye for now.